Before kingdoms change, men must change.
This is KC from Ground Control. Is there anybody out there? This is KC on transmission 177.6. Is there anybody out there? This is Sergeant C from the Resistance. Is there anybody out there? I don't know, sir. Maybe there's just no one left.
Before kingdoms change, men must change.
Well, greetings and welcome, my brothers and sisters. It's another beautiful day, or at least it is where I'm at. I hope it is where you're at. But, you know, it could be sunny in one place of the world and not so sunny in another. But if it isn't sunny and as beautiful as it is here, fear not, because I've been alive for over 50 years and no storm lasts forever. But welcome, my friends, my brothers and sisters, to Before Kingdoms Change. I am the man in the mirror, Captain KC, and I'm very glad to be with you. A lot of stuff going on, but isn't that always the case in this world? As long as it keeps spinning on, there'll be everything going on. In fact, reminds me real briefly of there was a television show. I think it was on HBO or something, and it had McConaughey and what's the guy from Cheers' name? I'm forgetting his name. Woody Harrelson. They played together, and it was some kind of like crime detective one. Actually, it was the one after that. It wasn't the year that they were, the season that they were in. It was the next one. And the main character standing out in the opening scene with his in-laws, and they have a beautiful place on the lake, and his father-in-law's going on about how crazy and horrible the world is and how, you know, the young are messed up and this is horrible. And old boy said something, the main character goes, you know, I hear old men all the time griping about this, griping about that, and how the world's going to end. But the world, old men pass away and the world still spins on. So that's going to be the case for all of us one day. Some maybe sooner than others. But I'm very glad to be with you today. Let me start out. Let me just start out with one of the main ones I think everybody's probably talking about, whether it's alt media, mainstream media, the propaganda outlets, which a lot of the alt media has turned into. And I'm sorry if I take it down for a second. Doesn't change the fact that I'm still glad. Oh, before I get there, actually, I'd like to say thank you to all the folks in the different outlets out there, from X to YouTube, more so on X, but for all the follows I've gotten. Thank you. You know what? And do me a favor, if you would. I would appreciate it very much, because I don't talk about it enough, I guess. But, you know, part of the reason that I'm doing this is I'm trying to make contact with the living out there. So whatever reason it was that made you follow me, shoot me. I don't care if it's on a DM, whatever, how you got to get it, but I'd love to know why. What made you want to click the follow button? And also, I'd say this to any show that you've listened to, this one, ones before it, you know, make a comment somewhere. Hey, let me know. I think you stink. Hey, I like this, or I don't like that. But make some contact. That's what I'm trying to do here. And also make the point. I think the show, I did this on purpose. The show name, Before Kingdoms Change. We got to change the man or woman in the mirror. The person in the mirror, right? So anyway, make contact with me. Love to hear from you, whatever it is. But I wanted to thank all the people that have followed me or left. The few have left messages somewhere, either whether it be YouTube, X, or something. Anyone you want. I really appreciate it. Really, it is a major reason why I'm doing this. And every day before I come on here, and I think I'm getting it down a little better, folks. I think I've double checked everything. I think I'm live everywhere. I'm even hit the recorded button this time. I forgot it the last couple times. Thank goodness you can download X videos. But anyway, I think I'm getting this down a little bit of a routine, even though things are kind of even hectic around here. I've told you folks this before. I help take care of a elderly mother-in-law, and I have right now, even upstairs, they came at 1:30. I have some health care professionals in the house. So if we hear some barking in the background, I have 3 beautiful little miniature dachshunds, and they are not quiet. I don't care who walks in the door. But let me get back to where I was for just a second. Every day, so I'm getting a little bit more of a routine in this. And every day before, about 5 minutes before, I try to kind of just, for lack of a better word, meditate, if you want to call it prayer, whatever it is. But I always ask heaven above to, if there is someone out there that needs something said, something that I say something or anything that will help improve the day of one person even. I don't know if it's just even something that makes you laugh for a moment or crack a smile, or if I get lucky enough to say something that's actually wise and it helps you out in some way, that's awesome too. But anyway, because I've been on the other end as well. I think I've told this story. I used to listen. I've been a radio listener for years. It's kind of what I'm mirroring this after this, even though it's online. It's kind of like, to me, a radio show. And I actually was offered the chance to go on the radio, a small radio station, but with the things I talk about and as maybe controversial as some of my perspectives and thoughts and then what I say are, I didn't want to bring any trouble to this nice person. So I didn't go that route just because of that. But when I used to listen, I would have one of my favorite radio personalities, even my worst days, would at least say something once that make me chuckle or smile or something. So if I can do that, that's awesome. Either way, if I do it for you, if I don't do it for you, make contact with me, please. I would enjoy it very much. So moving on. Okay, we're all, I think, aware you would have to live under a rock to not know what happened yesterday in Minnesota, I believe. So, the first thing, well, I'll just go into it. I've heard some of the stuff coming from the propaganda outlets, the alt media, which is somewhat propaganda outlets for the current administration. But I'm not here to talk about anything political about this. First off, there is no making sense of something that horrible or that evil. It's an evil act. It was done by a person moved by evil who made evil choices. Something, you don't have to be a psychiatric major, a, contributor on Fox News or CNN or anywhere else to know that somebody who commits an act like this, there's something wrong with the heart, mind, and soul. And there is no reason for it. I don't believe heaven has a reason for these things. I totally believe that if we have free will, which we do, and everyone has it on this earth, that things are allowed to happen because of that. And I know many people, myself included, when things have come up like this, losses, why does heaven allow this to happen? And I just think it's one of those things. I've kind of covered it in previous shows, but the whole thing behind free will, it seems to be all souls, whether they're here or even before or in heaven, right? We had angels revolt in heaven. I don't know if they're souls like we are. Gonna kind of guess that they somewhat are, or maybe completely are. But they chose evil things as well. So if you can choose them in heaven, then obviously you can choose them down here. And maybe that's not the trick, but that's the thing of being a heavenly father, a God, so to speak. Not so to speak, but a God. I kind of don't like that term a lot. We use it in, everybody has their different idea, image of what that is. And even when I say heavenly father, it's the same thing. But maybe that's one of the challenges, or the challenge, is that if you create souls and create a test like this, or this kind of existence, world, whatever you want to call it, that you kind of have to allow what happens to happen, for those souls to make their own choices. And obviously choices that we make, anybody makes, has repercussions. So, in a long story short of it, I just don't think that when people, that it's that these things are allowed to happen. I don't think they happen for reasons. So what happened there was somebody who was moved, overtaken by evil, whatever you want to call it in that sense, did a horrible act, an evil act. I can only imagine, we've all had losses in our life for different reasons, but it just, to us, from our perspective, from my perspective, this seems like the most horrible way, one of the most horrible things to happen. And it is. It absolutely is. And there's no words of comfort, no words of anything that are going to immediately and for some time make it any easier to deal with. We've all had some kind of loss in our life. I think you can kind of draw from your own experiences that way. When something happens so fresh, so just within a day or two, and even longer than that, months, people, especially with children, some folks just never completely recover. And I don't even know what that means totally anyway. I've lost people in my life. Several years ago, my father passed away, and we weren't even tremendously close. Very estranged. We were close and estranged. It's weird, but that even, I'm much more at peace with it than I was then. And I even was then, because he was suffering and I didn't want him to suffer, and I knew he was going to a better place. But let me make one thing about the poor souls who passed on and moved to the other side. The only thing that happened in that sense of it, their soul, you can't destroy a soul. So their souls are fine. They went into the arms of the angels. They are in a totally different place now, and know far more now than you and I can even imagine. We're never of any threat of losing anything being destroyed here. Maybe, you could say this body here, this crude matter that we apparently inhabit. Yes, you can destroy that here, but you can't destroy the soul that animates it. And that's what every person is. We're all the soul that animates this body, that has the experiences, not the body itself. So as horrible as everything was, they are in no danger and are okay. Now, it's a horrible thing to lose what would have been, especially from so young. And folks, I think I've said this to you before. I teach instruments to all kinds of students, and I have many students. I had 6 yesterday, and I think 5 of them are in the age range between 10 and 13. I think my oldest student yesterday was 13, as a matter of fact. And I talk to their parents every day when I see them. I saw them when they were dropped off and picked up. And I can't imagine having that happen and then, being a first person to witness it there and have all of them would be completely wrecked emotionally, just devastated. So I'm not trying to say any words here that would make that different. Just trying to kind of give you my perspective on it and what I think really how it is. It does say, and I'll play the clip sometime at some point. And I feel kind of odd saying this, but it's we have a very limited perspective of just because of where we're trapped in, and we can't see everything. Like I said, those children who were passed on to the other side, moved to the other side, know far more than you and I now in an instant. And they're okay. Now, the other person that made these evil choices, not so much. In fact, I've talked about this before. The things we do, that the line from Gladiator, what we do here echoes into eternity. And the darkness and everything else that person made a move into is a whole nother world. But it does say, and the master did say, blessed are those who mourn, or they shall be comforted, or they will be comforted, however you want to say it. And it's very strange. Think about it. Blessed. For him to use those words, blessed are those who mourn. I know it's kind of hard. It's hard for me to even wrap my brain around it, especially in situations like this. But depending on how one handles it, the different perspectives in time, if one can at different points, because it's going to come like waves and everything's going to change from 1 minute to the next, and heaven only knows, as I sure don't, how long it takes in that way for anything to even, how your head stops spinning and your heart stops breaking long enough to see anything. But I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that if you don't let it turn you to evil and don't let it make your heart hardened and the pain and the rest of it that we go through, if we turn our eyes to certain realities, that we will be comforted in these situations. Maybe not immediately, but at some point. So my prayers are with you folks, and that's the only thing we can do, folks. Maybe those directly around can help and offer in their company, different things. But even that, if you've ever been through any kind of death, and which I'm sure most people have, when these things happen, there's just no way to, the words do, and a little bit here or there, but in these horrible kinds of situations, I don't know. I can't imagine. I feel, because it's one of the reasons I've said in the past, I'll say it now, I don't believe in the death penalty by the state. If someone harms my family that way, I don't want the state to even arrest them. I want to go out and take that vengeance. Hopefully, if I ever got put in that position, I wouldn't. But, my human natural reaction would be, I want to, exact vengeance on someone like that. Wouldn't be a good thing at all. But other than that, and if we're not directly involved, believe it or not, collective human consciousness, whatever you want to say, does matter. And it does have an effect on things. We might not be able to see it. So if nothing else, and I'm sure people everywhere, but everybody says that, every politician is going to come out and make some kind of tweet, this or that, blah, blah, blah. Our prayers are with you. But I have said, and will continue to keep those folks in my prayers, that heaven and their hearts are comforted in some way. The master said it will be, it's possible. So I put my faith and belief in that. Other than that, I'm not going to go into any of the rest of it. Everybody's going to make hay of it. You'll have one side about, bring up this kind of political thing. I don't believe in making political hay out of anybody else's suffering in this way. How do you fix that? I don't know. People have to change. It's not going to be a government. It's not going to be this. It's people have to change. And there are people out there, souls, that are just evil. We are swimming in it. It's part of this test right here. And it may be, I kind of talked about it, but I didn't mention this last week, the whole foundation of my spiritual understanding. But I have a suspicion, more than that, but I'll just call it a suspicion that, and I've said this to many people I know, I think people are going to be disappointed. I think this battle of good and evil is everywhere, even in the next life. I don't know that just because, a soul, how many years, if a soul exists for 1,000 years, how long did the souls in heaven exist up there before they decided to rebel? So I think this battle goes on and on and on and on. In this world, the next world, if there are other worlds past that, all of them, evil seems to exist. Here it seems to exist on levels that are unbelievable, unimaginable. So I'm hoping, and I would love for the next one for tonight. I kind of think it's that way. I kind of do. I think that's part of the separating the evil and the non-evil here. Hopefully we'll be in different places. But to me, that doesn't mean someone, that maybe isn't evil here doesn't go on to the next life, then some point become evil. I don't know, folks. Those things haven't been revealed to me. But my heart is with those folks. And collectively, if we can not just lose our minds over this and get caught up in like I said, what's going to be pumped out and all of the emotional swings and and using it to manipulate people's hearts and minds. It's an awful thing. It's a horrible thing. Things just are, and we have to do our best to carry on and try to keep a different perspective and not let them make our world dark. We have that ability. So I pray for those folks to not fall down that, and at some point, I know there are entities beyond us, and that are offering whatever kind of comfort, rooting, however you want to say it, in the spirit of heaven. Just because I don't think that, I'm not saying that heaven can't intercede in things. I kind of err on the side, or I believe that things are, allowed to happen because everything has free will. But just as evil entities have the ability to move and prod, whatever you want to call it, try to cause, I believe that the other side, the heavenly side, does that. The spirit does the same thing. So I pray that the spirit of heaven is with these people, and I know it is. Hopefully, at some point they get to feel that and understand it in a very visceral way. I imagine it probably won't be soon, but if we all have that, maybe it'll help even a little more. Remember, this is a spiritual battle, folks. And this revolution, and this is the same thing the Master talked about, and even his disciples, is this revolution, this new, it's not from a government, it's not from anything, an outside force. It's going to be, if it ever happens, it'll be a revolution from change from within each of us, and then the actions that follow that. So I'm going to leave that there. If any of you guys have any kind of extra thoughts on that, please let me know. If you think I'm just talking, out my backside, okay, I get it. Let me know. All right. So, you know what? Other than just jumping in, I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes and we'll come back and kind of do a little bit of a reset because that's just a horrible, ugly thing. So, I will be back in just a minute.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for what is right, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted in the cause of right, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people abuse you and persecute you and speak all kinds of calumny against you for my sake. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven.
Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Come, O blessed of my Father, and inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me.
I was naked, and you clothed me. I was a prisoner, and you visited me. I was sick, and you came to me. You will ask, when did we do this for you? Whoever does this to the least of my brethren, he does it to me.
Before kingdoms change, men must change.
And welcome back, everybody. This is your host, Captain KC. Hope everybody's doing all right. Still? All right. So I wanted to get to something today. Mentioned earlier, folks reach out and contact me. And I had one person send me, I put a response out to something about, I forget what it was off the top of my head now. But a person responded to me and they talked about, it was something, and I mentioned Roy Cohn in the reply, that whatever was going on sounded very common. You know, anybody who is a follower, friend, or Roy Cohn is your mentor, something going on in the administration, and I forget, it sounds exactly like it. And I mentioned, if you don't know anything about Roy Cohn, look him up. But I mentioned that Roy Cohn, you know, he was gay. And that he died of AIDS. And somebody made a comment back to me that, yeah, they knew about that and they didn't understand the current administration's, the way that they were, their attitude or the way that they were being towards that community. So it was too long to make a response to try to explain, but it's not just the current administration's response to any community in particular, but a lot of the stuff that's going on right now, folks, is just red meat to throw the lions. Okay. Let me go back and explain this whole thing a little bit. We have people that are listening for the first time, and it'll be like that for quite a while, I hope, as people will come on and add themselves. But let me see if I can briefly kind of go what is this thing I call Operation Trump. Okay. And in other comments, we've been being prepped for this for a long time. I tried to explain before, and let me do it again, that the biggest resistance and the biggest danger to any government, folks, is the citizenry. And it's a vice versa thing. The biggest threat to any the citizenry is its government. That's why the quote from Thomas Paine, any patriot's real duty is to protect their country from its government. And that doesn't matter who's in charge of it. So this group, and it was often mostly called the right. I hate that paradigm, that left-right, but everybody seems to get it. So I'll use it for demonstration purposes. But the resistance mostly came to government from what people call the right. And for the government, you can go back, Clinton, the other administrations, they complained about it all the time. And it's typically the people who just won't go along with whatever it is they're trying to force upon everyone. So in managing people, and that's all government is, remember, government isn't the top layer in this pyramid. There are people behind it, the money that gets people elected, all the interest, even, our current leader and other people that we call the richest people. They don't print money, and they don't own the banks that print the money. And central banks run every country in the world, but I think 3, maybe 5. Iran is one of them. I forget the other ones. But there could possibly be a reason why everybody, or, one of our supposed allies in the current administration would love to go into Iran. This is nothing new. But they tried many times. They tried with both Bushes. Reagan was probably the last president that got anybody to go, kind of got this group to go along with things in the 80s. But since then, it's just grown. You got 9/11. You got all these things that happen and that were people revolt against. They want to, anything, all these freedoms that they want to take away. It's about control. So the people at the top who run our government, and that's not the people in the offices. I don't care what office it is. Congress, presidents, heads of departments, agencies, whatever. They are all puppets, folks. All. And always have been. That's why they all have to go groveling to the people with money to get elected. And even some of the people they go groveling to, like this person who gave the current administration $100 million, I think it was, they don't print the money either. So there is a entity above that. These are front men for all this stuff going on. So to get control of this particular group, they really did have to find a Pied Piper to come along and kind of get them in line, or at least pacify them. Because the biggest threat is us. And they know this. This isn't any secret. The other thing is, and in our declaration, it talks about our form of government being based on the consent of the governed. And in truth, that's really the truth of any government. I've said this before. I don't care what government it is. It has to have the consent of the people. If the Chinese people ever want to get rid of the Communist Party, believe me, 1.5 billion people can get rid of even 100,000 if they wanted to. So it's the government is the mechanism that is used to control people. That's all its function is in modern time. And even in old time, antiquity, doesn't matter. That's why one of our founding fathers said this form of government, self-government, which is really the truth of it all, whether you have the Communist Party or this, the consent of the people allow them to do whatever it is, or go along with whatever laws it is they pass. So anyway, they had to get this group of people in line, and it just happens to be Trump did it perfectly. Now, I don't know how long, because they have different puppets set up and different people that they can draw on. And if something naturally kind of happens, they'll jump on the bandwagon or behind the scenes, take control of it, manipulate the whole 9 yards. Because even with the current administration, even Donald Trump, folks, all his stuff is financed through these same people. If they wanted, even Elon Musk doesn't print money either. He can't print up his own money. His stuff is leveraged, stocks, all this. So if these people wanted to get rid of any of these folks, they would in a heartbeat. They have quadrillions of dollars. And they can print and they control the flow and supply of money and all of the resources. They already have kind of locked them down. This happened a long time ago. So they've used the current administration to come in to kind of control that group that's out of control. And what was one of the groups they went after? And I hate this word, but I'm going to use it anyway. The evangelical group. Okay. This current administration went right for them. The Tea Party types, folks, just people who believe that they should self-govern themselves. You got to get them in line to take us where they want to take us to. So in doing so, going to have a couple things happen. It's all going on in the background, folks, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit, okay, where the connections to this deep state, all the intel communities, the people who've been pushing this government control, what is the word I'm looking for? Not observation, but they listen to everything we say. They're monitoring everything. The word will come to me here in a few minutes, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Surveillance state. The surveillance state having all the information on us. The reason they have this surveillance state and they want all this information, which they've been collecting for 100 years, folks. The whole move to AI to do it, all this stuff is just to further control. That is going on. This current administration has those folks all in their administration. It's the big money people who got them there. It's the Elon Musk, whether he knows it or not. I mean, I'm going to tell you folks, X, even though I'm on it, is collecting data on all of us, just like Facebook, just like everything else. The phones, everything's recording. You got the NSA. This has been going on for a long time. And like I said, I'm going to go into a little more of this, but this is going on in the background. Now, to be able to move us where they want to go, Agenda 2030, all this, I mean, really have control and lock down everything. Now, they have to do it in a way that keeps the barbarians from the gate. Just as Henry Ford said a long time ago, if the people ever figure out the banking scam and the rest of the scam we're all running on them, there'll be a revolution by morning and all of us will be dead, meaning the people in his circles. It's the same thing now, folks, but it just has to be sold different and it has to have a different front. The sugar helps the medicine go down, right? And that's what Operation Trump is. So he's going to have to throw a bunch of the red meat out front, a bunch of things in the front of the stage and in front of the curtain on the big screen, so to speak, that makes it look like exactly what's not going on behind the scenes isn't happening. I'll give you a couple examples. So it's kind of why he's going after different groups that he knows that, let's just call it his base, will be all for. Oh, yeah, whatever community is, the gay community, this community, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it's just the red meat for the lions to have something. It's the bread and circus of it all. Here you go. I mean, here's another one. It's kind of why this wasn't accidental, folks. And I said this before, but it's why they let all the people from foreign countries in here. Now, we call them illegal aliens, fine. But don't forget that the government processed them in. Whether you agree with that government or not, during the Biden times, the Obama times, when they let these folks in. I mean, these folks that just came past into the country for the last 4 years, the government basically through NGOs processed them in here. And there were people at that time saying, hey, look, it's already set up. They're letting them in because for multiple reasons. Nothing ever happens for just one single reason. But they're already planning, the contracts are already written and being dished out to move these people back. So the whole ICE thing and having them go round everybody up, who wouldn't? I mean, it seems kind of, right? Logical. I mean, reasonable even. Hey, these people came in illegally, but that's a interesting dynamic there. If the government processed or agents of the government processed them in here, right? If you go to walk in somebody's house and they just open the door and let you in, the same kind of thing happened to the people on January 6th, right? You had grandmas and other people arrested for just walking into the Capitol, but the Capitol Police opened the doors. They allowed them to come in. Same kind of thing, folks. Same kind of thing here. So they let these people in to then use them as pawns against, or as pawns in their political agendas and the rest of it. So I'm all for, and anybody who's reasonable would be, getting rid of violent, horrible people, evil people. There's no argument against that. And how could there be? I mean, I guess you could, but it don't seem to have much of a leg to stand on doing that. So that was more red meat, and it gave the current administration some more red meat to throw out to everybody, because they're going to be, certain people are going to be against this particular group, certain people are going to be against this particular group. And even, okay, here's the next example. This whole thing with everybody, they're going to arrest John Bolton now. They're going to bring some people up, and I expected this. But these people don't run anything. I mean, John Bolton is worth, I don't know what, $4, $5, $6 million. Some of the other ones are going to bring up. These are not people who are in charge of anything. They're just puppets as well. And believe me, the people behind the scenes have enough puppets, and they don't mind throwing some, the Geppettos, right? If you're not familiar with who that was Pinocchio's puppet master, so to speak, or the person that made him and pulled the strings. He wanted to become a real boy, right? So do these folks. But what they are is puppets. So you're going to get some of the low-level puppets that are brought out and maybe even brought to trial and tried for this. And there's nothing really new there. Every administration kind of goes after, Nixon, anybody? Just for somewhat of modern time, one administration goes after the political enemies of another administration. Left behind. Now, it hasn't, and when Obama and other people were around, they were doing it. I think even the Biden administration, the Clinton administration, they all, they do it for red meat for their followers. Oh, we're going after this person. We're going to go after this one. We're going after this one. So there's nothing new here. This is Nixon Roy Cohn politics to the exact T, and it's just politics in general. So he's going to bring some of this red meat out and throw to the lions, so it keeps everybody occupied and not staring at or even thinking about what might be going on behind the scenes, or the fact that there could be anything going on behind the scenes. Another perfect example of this is I forget what her name is right off, the former Democrat president who changed political parties and now sits as the director of national intelligence, Gabbard. Okay. I've talked about this before. To me, it's just blatant as anything, but that's just one failed. Your political career was failing in one way, so you just switched teams and kissed up to the right people to be moved. And, I think they might be trying to move her in for possibly a president. I see Rubio out there. I see her. Of course, I think they want J.D. Vance. That's Peter Thiel's boy. And I'm going to get to him in a little bit, the Thiel part of this. There's nothing new about the Thiel connection to the Trump administration. They've been friends for a while. And nothing new about Thiel and his company being involved with the intelligence agencies and the deep state. So I said, this administration is owned and just infused, there's another word I'm really looking for, but with deep state people that have been in the deep state for decades. Okay. But anyway, this other one, they're going to go after, and they're talking about invading Mexico or going to war with different countries in South America. Okay. Over the cartels and the drug trade. Let me remind you, the biggest one, what was his name? The name Epstein, but that's not anyway, his name will come to me. But he was the biggest drug dealer in the 80s, 90s, before El Chapo, the original one from Colombia. The biggest cartel there was. Well, to finally get him, they made deals with his enemies, the other cartels. And let me remind you of something. What has controlled the cartels and a massive flow of all the drugs into this country is and has been the American government. It's intelligence agencies. But you don't hear him saying he's going to war with them. So what's really going on to me behind the scenes is that people are just fighting for control of these things, not to get rid of them, but to control them. If you've ever seen the movie Sicario with Josh Brolin, and I forget the female actor in it, but at the very end, she's an FBI agent that gets sucked into this intelligence operation going on, and Benicio del Toro plays a character in there too, where he's a former Mexican prosecutor that's now helping our intelligence agencies. Anyway, they go on this mission, and you even have Delta Force involved in it. And she finds out at one point, why they picked her for this operation, because she's FBI. The CIA tells her literally, well, the CIA can't operate in the United States without being attached to a different agency, because it can't be a CIA operation. So it's an FBI op that the CIA are attached to, which I'll go into. But don't forget this either, folks. FBI is an intelligence agency. It was started that way by a president. It has some law enforcement functions, but it's intelligence. It was meant to be just domestic intelligence, but for the longest time during Hoover, and Hoover had agents in every foreign embassy we had doing intelligence worldwide. In fact, there was a battle back and forth when the CIA they were trying to create it. Hoover was trying to have it not created because he wanted to control it. Then it ended up being more than he wanted to deal with, so he let it go. But they're back into that. They never kind of completely left it. I've worked with FBI agents in Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay, so they're always out there somewhere. So that's just another intelligence agency. Anyway, to get back where I was in that movie part, connecting this to that, she kind of goes crazy because she sees some drug stuff going on, and she finds out that Benicio del Toro's character is, not what they keep calling him Medellin, and the people that he runs into. And she's like, what is Medellin? So Josh Brolin's character tells us, look, until we can get X amount of the percentage of the American people not wanting to take these drugs, the best that we can hope for is just try to maintain some kind of order, try to control the order. So that's all that's going on here, folks. But it'll be thrown out that he's battling the drug cartels and the rest of it. And it's a mirage. Now, maybe he personally doesn't, but he was partying with people for decades. Trust me, in the parties that he was going to with Epstein and the rest of them, Studio 54, Roy Cohn, all the rest of them, they had no problem with drugs. Then he didn't seem to have much of a problem with it then. He's not the first president either. They questioned old Bill about a massive amount of cocaine coming in right there in Arkansas. Whatever was going on right underneath my nose. I swear, I didn't see a thing. And then he pardons a bunch of cocaine dealers. So the government has been involved with this and controlling it even far more than the cartels themselves. If they wanted to end them, they probably could have done that a long time ago, or at least, kept it under controlled a lot more. But it's a product that a lot of Americans want. And Brolin's character was right in that movie. As long as people want it here, they'll be trying to sneak it some way in. There's money to be made off of it. And I don't care what kind of product it is, pencils, this or that. If there's money to be made from it, there are people that are going to make money off of it. And another movie from that same vein of Sicario, he's sitting at one point with I think it's the Secretary of Defense, talking about going to war with the cartels and locking the border up. And Brolin's CIA character tells the secretary, well, closing the border up is good for drugs. It drives the price of it up. So our government and the intel agencies are the biggest drug dealers and have been controlling that for a long time. I've known people, not only my dad, but some of his closest friends that were high up in military places. One time I had mentioned some things that were going on in Afghanistan about the drugs, the poppy. And they said, yeah, what do you think we were doing in Vietnam? Come on, man. So it's nothing new. But once again, I make that point to say this whole thing is just going to be red meat to throw the followers, to distract everybody, keep them away from anything about the Epstein files. And folks, even that has been used as a flash, the sex part of it. Not that that isn't important and that they shouldn't go after those people, but come on. I mean, they're making deals with Ghislaine behind the thing. Oh, I don't care. She came out and said, I didn't see Trump. He was a nice guy, just a perfect gentleman. I never saw him do anything. He helped old ladies with their groceries. He gave the little kids lollipops, whatever it was. Okay. I don't know if I've said this one, but let me explain this one to you. Let me put it this way to you, folks. You're sitting in a federal jail somewhere, and your only chance of getting out of that jail is President A can get you out, or person A can get you out of that. They're the only person that has the power to get it. Now, are you more likely to say something about person A that is going to put them right in the cell next to you? So there is absolutely no hope of you getting out if they're sitting in the cell right next to you. Now, I know this doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, or, an expert in calculus, or even, analytical geometry, imaginary algebra, whatever it is, to kind of figure that one out. I've seen enough comments around. So I think everybody kind of gets, what's going on with that scam, but it's just another part of it. And everything else is just flash, just like the old days when the paparazzi used to take all their pictures and the flash bulbs would be in everybody's face and you can't see anything after that, right? Bright light in your face. This is the bright lights in your face. Keep it. Even the one with the flag incident over this executive order. All right, so let me hit that one for a moment. All right. Okay, and there are people that are going on for it. Okay, let me give you a little bit of background just so you understand the perspective, okay? Former active duty Army. I was deployed for a very short time to Iraq while I was in the Army. I've lived in Iraq and Afghanistan as a contractor for years. Dad, Vietnam. Wife, a military officer. Sister in the Army. My dad's brother, Vietnam, 3 of them. So believe me, I have a ton of connection to the military. And I'm going to get to that in a minute too. Hold on, let me make myself a note to talk about Mr. Smedley Butler for a second in this military thing. Okay, but anyway, so that, I'm as patriotic and love the flag as much as anyone in there. When I was a kid, went on the 1776, the Centennial Freedom Train. So was my dad. So we all love our country, and I like the flag. It's a beautiful flag. To me, the most beautiful one. And I like several. I like the Irish flag, the Italian flag. And I have no interest in burning a flag myself. But all of us, myself and all these other folks, even my dad, who would, it would anger him. He would be insulted and take offense. And I understand people would. But he said it, I've said it. You have the right to protest your government in any way, shape, or form, as long as you are not interfering with the ability of your fellow citizen to exercise their ability for life, liberty, property, and happiness. And yes, Jefferson originally wrote property, from what I understand, not the pursuit of happiness, but I got changed for whatever reason. But anyway, as long as you are not keeping someone else or denying them their ability to do that, okay, protest your government any way you want. Want to burn a flag? Burn a flag. Whatever. I'm not insulted by it, but some people may be. That's another issue. But the first issue, and this is just be straight off the top, since when did the president pass laws? I thought that was Congress's job. There's supposed to be a separation of powers, the judicial, the executive, and the legislative branch. So when did we get to the point that now, just from presidential edict, something could be made? And I know, well, you can write an executive order. From my study and understanding of executive orders, they were meant to be able to only written to kind of control and deal with how the executive branch and its agencies function, not just to be able to write for one person. Does that even make sense to anybody? So they made 3 branches. Why make 3? It's in the Constitution that way for a reason. And the president doesn't have that kind of power to just write I'm going to make this illegal. Yeah, it don't work that way, Mr. President. Now, I mean, you can try and make it work that way. Good luck with that. Truthfully, I hope like 200 million people decide to burn a flag tomorrow. It's what you will consent to, folks. Not that I want that to happen, but anytime the government, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's a Democrat person, a Republican person, whatever it is. If you come out and tell me I can't do something, it makes me want to do it just to stick it in your face, to remind you of who actually is in power. Government, and not a single official of it is more important than the citizen or has any power over a citizen. The only power you have is if I consent to your law. And that's my right to either do or not. And that's yours too. And I can give you that consent and withdraw it at any moment I want. Now, I'm not saying that, the government can't send its agents and its, Gestapo after us, people in uniform, to come enforce that. They have that ability to do so. Now, you'll answer for that. Maybe not here, but here as well. But you will answer for that. Just because, that's why I don't, this whole thing, back the blue thing. Yeah, okay. I back good people doing good things, doing right. Just when I was in uniform, it was the same way. But anyway, so let me go a little bit further with this. So first off, the president doesn't have that kind of power. He can try, and okay, but in the end of it, if we consent to it, the other part is, okay, let's say you go buy a flag from somewhere. Isn't that your property? So how do I, or the government, have the right to tell you what you can do with your property? Private property, anybody? I know there are lots of people out there, with a poor guy who got almost lost, or maybe he did lose his cake making business because he didn't want to make it for a certain group. When I was younger, and I think it's still this way, but I used to see the signs, we reserve the right to refuse service to anybody. That used to hang in and be in a lot of storefronts. And that was true because it's private property. You own a business. That's your business. If you decide you don't want to sell, a candy bar to me because you don't like the way I look, okay, that's your right to do so. I'll go somewhere else and buy a candy bar if you're going to be that way. But it is your right to do that. You don't have to serve me. These people that I see all over the place that are in stores, you have to wait on me. In fact, saw somebody, here you go, it's ironically enough, with a Make America Great hat on and a Trump shirt, and the people there didn't want to serve him. Now, I'm not saying they're doing, they're morally right, politically right. Seems kind of stupid to me. But obviously, you have more money than you know what to do with because you don't want to take this person's money. But if that's your store and you don't want to serve them, okay, that's your right to do so. But this person who screams freedom and the rest of it, blah, 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 make America great. Oh, you got to serve me. No, it don't work that way. Cracker Barrel wants to change their logo and do the rest of it. It's their company. Now, if you don't want to go in and eat there anymore and get them to change it back, that's your right to do so. Same thing, the NFL, if they want to come out and have guy cheerleaders and the rest of the stuff and talk about how horrible freedom-loving people are or MAGA people are, or whatever it is, go for it. You want to come out and have your players, do hands up, don't shoot that never happened. Okay, they're your employees. Go for it. I don't have to watch it. And I don't have to pay a dime to come to one of your games. Believe me, if you want to get any of these places, the NFL, back into order or whatever, or some semblance of reasonability, watch what happens, even if you did it for 1 Sunday, 2 Sundays, 3 Sundays, where not a single soul shows up at the stadium. Believe me, they will alter their behavior. We really hold a lot more power than we think. You vote every time you spend a penny. But anyway, back to the topic at hand, covering more of this. So, the president hasn't had the power. Congress makes laws, not him. Somebody telling somebody else what they can and can't do with their own darn property. And let's go even a more silly basic. We're talking about a piece of cloth that has particular colors on it in a certain pattern. So I tell you what, if that's the law, you can't, because the American flag has very distinct, it has to be certain things, 50 stars, 13 stripes, white and red, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so put a 51st star. Cut one of the, before you burn it, cut one of the stripes off so it don't have the exact one. Now, I know the guy that got arrested in front of the White House, they didn't arrest him for burning the flag. There were some ordinances that he violated there locally where you can't burn it in front of the White House or you can't do this. Now, there's other ways in this battle to go back and forth. But the part about a flag is just so ridiculous. And if you are on the side of, yeah, it should be because you're offended, too bad. And you're in the wrong. I'm not even going to use the one we used to use in the military, but you are as wrong as two people doing something that ain't right. Mercy, please. But see, just another piece of red meat to throw out there to get people to, jump on the bandwagon. So, distraction from this. Now, let me see if I can find this real quick. All right. So I wanted to go into, reminded me of something that I was going to say about the military part. Give me 1 second, folks. See if I can find this real quick. Okay, here we go. Babble, that was quick. I found it fast. Okay. I don't know if, all right. I've already kind of given you the perspective of military, but it didn't take me long to understand when it was in a war zone, and it didn't take my father and other people that I know very long when you're in the middle of a war zone to figure out you're not fighting for your country. Okay, it kind of becomes clear that there are other powers. So, I've appreciated over time people when they say thank you for your service. But this notion, and a lot of people have it, both veterans and people that know nothing about the military, have never been in the military, that we're all fighting for the nation, yada, yada, yada. This whole thing of, folks, no, we weren't. And I'm going to read something to you here in a second from a gentleman. But it's backwards. That's not the way it is, okay? Our military, first off, let me just tell you something from experience, firsthand. You talk about a government agency that covers more stuff up than you'd ever dream of in your life. The DOD. Okay, let me remind you, it seems to be this other thing too. When I said they want to arrest Brennan and the rest of this other part, okay, the scamdemic, and for all of you the folks were against the scamdemic and the vaccines and the rest of it, I am too, no problem. If you go and look, all the contracts between the government and the pharmaceutical companies, they were DOD contracts, folks. But all these wars, we do not fight and we do not start wars for democracy, to spread democracy to places, folks. That's not why they happen. I'm sorry to have to tell you that, but that's not why they happen. They happen because entities in the United States, usually, mostly always business entities, have problems with whatever's going on in some government. I'll take Cuba, for instance. For the longest time, they had General Batista in there. He was our guy. He let companies do whatever they wanted to. Was it Pepsi, Coke, and the rest of them got sugar for next to nothing because they didn't have to pay the poor peasants anything for it. All kinds of stuff. Just American corporations, United Fruit, Standard Oil and others that were having problems with the government, or that country had resources that they wouldn't allow our businesses into that we wanted to. So you send in the military. You create some BS reason for war. Iraq, anybody? But go look at the history. Don't take my word for it. There's always in any war, including World War II, that are not honest about, and the real reasons we're going into that war aren't the reasons that we're being sold, much like this current administration with all this other stuff going on that I'm trying to explain to you. It's flashbulbs in your eyes, it's distractions to keep you from knowing or even thinking about what's going on for real behind the scenes. So anyway, but don't take totally my word for it. I want to use, if you know who Smedley Butler is, if not, let me explain to you. He was one of our, I think at the time, most highly decorated soldiers ever. He was in World War I, World War II. This guy won the Medal of Honor twice. He wrote a famous book called War is a Racket. And that's all it is. But I want to read you a quote from him to kind of explain to you. Again, this is coming from, started out as a young lieutenant, made it all the way to major general. Even at one point in time exposed a coup that was trying to happen during, I think, FDR's presidency. Look it up. Type in Smedley Butler exposes coup. Same kind of thing. I think I've said this on the air before, that the Epstein thing is in a different way. But there was a coup and they were going to use veterans and back him to get rid of the current administration to install a fascist regime. Hold on, I'm making myself a note about that whole part. Anyway, so this is a patriot, folks. But let me read you what he wrote in his book, War is a Racket. I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service. And during that period, I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I helped make Mexico, and especially Tampico, safe for American oil interest in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped the raping of a half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers and Harriman in 1902 through 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for the American sugar interest in 1916. I helped make Honduras right for the American fruit companies in 1903. In China, in 1927, I helped to see that Standard Oil went on its way to make profits unmolested. Looking back on it, I might have been able to give Al Capone a few hints. The best Al Capone could do was operate his racket in 3 districts. I operated on 3 continents. So if we're really honest about it, even those of us who served, and you dig down deep, it wasn't our nation we were serving. Now, what happens, I will tell you this, and I've heard this from folks I know, my father and other people in Vietnam, and from being there, even when you figure this out, if you're in the war zone, what you really, for the person next to you, for the people you're there with, those who everybody tries to go home alive with their legs and arms and everything else attached. So you end up taking care of the guy in the foxhole next to you. That becomes what it is. So this whole thing, and we need to really understand. So the National Guard in the streets and the rest of it, folks, these people have no idea what they're, and that's another thing. This is just a phase of it. And I had this suspicion that they're putting, and they're going to put them out as many places as they can, because I've heard of people in the alt media and other people talk about the collapse. Okay, so once again, this has to be a controlled collapse. Remember, people said Obama presided over a nation in decline, and he did. Okay, well, they brought Trump in to bring the change, because to bring this change, if you bring it and you have that group that resist this normally, they're going to be the barbarians at the gate. They're going to come, just like January 6th. Think about that for a sec, folks. What was that? Roughly 1 million people, and they literally took over Congress. The Capitol Police couldn't have stopped them even if they wanted to. And the National Guard they brought in that day probably wouldn't have done much better. You might have had a higher death toll, but if that 1 million people wanted to go in there and take over Congress like they did, they wouldn't have needed them to open the doors, and it wouldn't need to be partially in operation. Even the current FBI hasn't put out all the names that were there and admitted to any of this. So this is, it's not as, things are not as they seem. And, you know, we got to lose this fear. So what? Okay, that's the way it is. It's not right. I get it. We have to be able to admit these things. If we're ever going to change this kingdom and change ourselves. Remember, I said this is a change from within. So we're going to have to be able to see things differently and admit that things are the way they are. Even when your guy's in office. And this is the way I know, and this is the evidence to me, that it's just that. So he's going to bring some of these people to throw red meat. But nothing he's doing, even now I've heard I heard the other day he's calling for something against George Soros. He's going to prosecute him with RICO. Okay, go for it. I mean, this guy's a criminal, no doubt. People are criminals, go for it. But what he's not doing is attacking the things in government or the parts of it that need to be. There's nothing real substantial going on. Is the IRS going away? Is he getting rid of the intel agencies? Has he gotten control of the out-of-control military-industrial complex? Heck no, they're still making money. They're still sending money to Israel that they have to then turn around and buy U.S. weapons with. That's called money laundering. That's what happens in war. But anything of any real substantialness of changing the dynamic between the individual and the government, he's not going to go anywhere near it. Anybody hear any talk about getting rid of the Federal Reserve? No, he can get rid of Powell or whoever it is out there. But he's not talking about getting rid of it completely and starting to print our own money. JFK did, and he got shot for it. And from what I understand, Lincoln talked about that as well. So there's not going to be any, and he's not doing anything substantial that's going to change that at all. Putting troops in the street sound like he's changing the dynamic between the citizen and governments. He's not out talking about, hey, we have to change. We have to change, folks. He's not saying things like I am and some other reasonable people are, of if you really want change of a nation. No, he's going to change it. I'm going to make America great again. BS. And he's going to keep feeding it to people as long as they keep buying into it, because they're going to have to change this system. Number one, we've been broke. The dollar's in horrible condition. It's worthless. Here you go, folks. You know what our biggest export is? Debt. And I'm going to get to this. I was listening to somebody in the alt media who thinks they're just the top of the walk and everything. And I will give them this. They're a little young. So, you know, they haven't had the experience yet. No worries. But they had somebody I liked too. Edward Dowd, actually. He was a smart, intelligent guy as far as economics and other things go. And they were just, you know, they made this statement: do we have fascism light? Well, first off, there is no such thing as fascism light. You're either free or you're not. But after listening to this interview, I thought, when do people think that we didn't have business running our government? Folks, in the 1800s, when Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Carnegies, when you had all of a sudden robber barons come in, they've been controlling the government since then. Other people probably for it. Do you think, honestly, we have this image in our heads that they signed the Declaration of Independence, and don't forget, the Constitution wasn't ratified till what, 1791, 1792, some years later from 1776. But they just signed this declaration, and we've been free ever since then, and everybody just left us alone. Really, you think the king, the royalty of England, oh, we lost the colonies? Oh, okay, well, just forget about it. All right, stuff happens, I guess, And the bankers, remember, Benjamin Franklin said, and somebody else said it too, but it wasn't taxation, wasn't without representation. The inability of the citizens of, and I'm paraphrasing this part, of the colonies to gain control of printing and the supply of money within the colonies by the bankers and the royalty was the prime reason for the Revolutionary War. So do you think these people just gave it up? Oh, yeah, we'll let it go. No, it didn't work that way. But anyway, and then when you find out the Rockefellers and even J.P. Morgan in the 1800s, they were funded and loaned money by much richer entities than they. In fact, when J.P. Morgan died, remember, this guy paid off the national debt, just wrote the president a check for it. When he died, everybody thought he was the richest man in the world, but he only owned like 15, 20% of J.P. Morgan. Turns out there was other entities that owned the rest of it. In that case, I do believe it was the Rothschilds. It was the Rothschilds that loaned the money to the Rockefellers, the rest of them. They were powers that are much bigger than this. But they took over. What? They had all this money. They started buying politicians up back then. Politicians have been bought and sold since. You ever heard the expression, the oldest profession, what the oldest profession on the planet is, right? Prostitution. Okay. Well, politicians are nothing more than prostitutes, folks. They're just not directly giving sex away for the money. Something else. But they're selling themselves. That's all they are. Prostitutes. It starts with the same thing. P, right? Prostitutes, politician. It's interchangeable. Anyway, but going back to this, I don't understand why people think there's some point in time when we weren't being controlled by, our government wasn't being controlled by big business. And there is no such thing as fascism light, communism light, and what. You're either a free people or we're not. And since, like all governments, is based on whether we consent, in a way we are free. I get it. We're free to consent or we're free to not consent. And it's just become too much of a pain or too inconvenient to not consent. That, I've said this before, that is what American exceptionalism is. It's at a point in time in history, in all of history, which was the history of slavery, some group of people controlling another group of people. There was a group of people, just happened to be in the colonies here, that said, we're not going to tolerate that anymore. No, we want to form our own government and self-govern ourselves. And they just didn't write it in a piece of paper. They had to get up. You had, I don't even know how young, but I know as young as 13, 14, 15-year-old farm boys and the rest of the people pick up their rifles and go fight the British Army in resistance to it. They were willing to give everything they had, including their lives, their fortunes, their homes, everything they had. They could have easily said, no, I don't, these people will come take this or they'll come take that. I'm going to work my farm. How's my family going to eat? Who's going to pick the corn and the wheat and this and that? Can't afford to go. They could have easily done that. I'm not chastising anybody and I'm not condemning anybody. I get, We've been part of the game, folks. Life has been made comfortable enough for us that we'll submit. And that's part of the next process as well. All right. I'm going to take a short break. And when I come back, I'm going to go into some of this history I was talking about with Peter Thiel and the deep state and the surveillance state. And then I think I'll wrap it up from that. So don't go anywhere. Hang out. There's more to come. I will be back. I am your host, Captain KC. I will be back in just a few minutes.
Which of you, for all his worrying, can add 1 day to his life, 1 inch to his stature? So don't concern yourself so much with the means of life, what you shall eat and drink, or with your bodies, and how they should be clothed. Life is more than clothing. Consider the birds of the air. They do not sow, or reap, or gather into barns, but our Heavenly Father feeds them. Will He not all the more feed you? Are you not worth more than they? Consider the lilies of the field. They do not spin. They do not weave. But not even Solomon in all his glory was so arrayed as one of these. Now, if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow thrown into the fire, will He not all the more clothe you, who have so little faith? Therefore, do not ask, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? How shall we dress ourselves? It is only the faithless who set their hearts on these things. You must first seek the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and everything will be added freely unto you. So do not be anxious about tomorrow. Tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who persecute you. If you love only those who love you, why should you claim any credit? Even the tax collectors do as much. If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, offer the other also. And if anyone takes away your coat, give him your cloak as well. Give to everyone who asks from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them back. Do not do to others anything you would not have them do to you. Pass no judgment, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Be perfect, just as our Father in heaven is perfect. Ask for this gift, and it shall be given you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and the door shall be opened. What father refuses his child If you who are imperfect know how to give what is good to your children,
How much more will your Father in heaven give to those who ask him? Before kingdoms change, men must change.
This is KC from ground control. Is there anybody out there? This is KC on transmission 177.6. Is there anybody out there? This is Sergeant C from the Resistance. Is there anybody out there? I don't know, sir. Maybe there's just no one left.
Before kingdoms change, men must change.
And welcome back, my brothers and sisters. Thank you for hanging out with me today, or allowing me to hang out with you. Okay, so moving right along. Let me go back over a few things before I get to what I'm going to wrap it up with, I think. First off, let me let you know, I have a first guest coming up. Next week, I'm going to have a guest. His name is V.E.M. Miller. Has an interesting story. Let me just give you a quick, and I'll let him go into it when he's on the show. But according to a sheriff in California, I forget what county he's the sheriff for, but this is the gentleman that a sheriff arrested for supposedly being the possible third attempted assassin of President Trump. Now, I'll put out some things through the week so you can go get but you can hear this guy literally on the talking is being recorded, talking to the sheriff thing. He was actually not part of the Trump campaign. Maybe so. I forget, like a precinct captain or something to that effect. I forget exactly. That was going to the rally. And he was the one that when he got to the area, and we're talking several miles away, folks, where they were parking the cars and the rest of it, he went to the law enforcement people and said, hey, I have a few weapons in the back of the car. What would you guys like me to do? And anyway, it ended up being a grand fiasco. This sheriff is now running for governor in California, but he's going to tell the story, and you can find him. He's also has the founder of America Happens Network. And I'm going to read you his thing from Vin Miller is the founder of the American Happens Network, not the third assassin, but he is a media assassin and a constitutionalist. So you can look that up on X. He also happens to have a website called americahappens.com, literally how it sounds. And it's a conglomeration of different podcasters and everybody that they're trying to kind of in one place. So a kind of a media conglomerate of alt media folks. But he's coming, he was in Hollywood. I have some interesting, he did some television shows and other stuff worked out there. So it should be a very interesting interview, but he will be with me next Thursday. And I think at one point in time, he invited me on his podcast as well. So tune in for that or listen to the recording. Either way it works. I like to have you folks live at one point. Hopefully we'll grow to where we are. And let me add one other thing to that. When I was thanking the followers earlier, I don't know if I've said this to you folks, but I told you I had 3 dogs. I have 4 kitties. Only 3 of them are still with me here physically. 1 passed away just last November. And I can tell you, when I was talking about the earlier subject, even losing that little kitty, she was such a sweetie. It made me mad at heaven. So I get the lost part in that. Not the same thing I get, but I get a I have somewhat of an understanding it. But I wanted to we I say my wife and another officer rescued those babies, the kitties, and the mom and dad actually from Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And I call them my asylum seekers. But anyway, so when I'm going through different things on X and other, I see the people that do the rescue of animals and all that. And I said thank you last week. And anybody, whether you're just an individual person or a group, what a beautiful thing. Thank you for doing that kind of thing. But I also want to say some of those have come on as my followers. And thank you for that. Let me let you folks know if any of you folks ever, I'm not sure. That's why I would love to know why people follow me. But if I ever get anywhere on this in X or anything and we make any kind of money here, I will donate a portion of that money to people who do that kind of thing. Because that stuff breaks my heart. It just kills me every time I see the suffering of these animals. It tears me up. I have to stop, be honest with you. Because I think I've said this before. When we lost that kitty, and she was completely healthy, we thought. She was only a couple years old. Turns out she had a bad heart. She was starting to have seizures. One of my dogs has seizures. Now two of them, actually. But she's had them for years, almost like somebody who suffers from epilepsy. Took me a second to get that one out. But we kind of thought that, turns out she was having heart attacks. When we took her, it was too late. And we kind of had to be there with her while she was going away. And I was on the ground sobbing and praying. Heartbreaking. So whenever I see the suffering of these animals like this and people, all kinds of stuff, it tears at my heart. So if I ever get to the point where I can, and let me make a suggestion to you folks, because I would have done it already. I know some of them are in foreign countries and there's all kind of weird things, but may I make a suggestion to you folks? Can you figure out a different way to donate other than just PayPal? I've had experiences with them and I don't like the PayPal mafia much. So if there's some other way you folks can get, I probably would have given some money. There's one of my babies right there. That's her sister. We had two boys and two girls. And she's my little cuddle bug. Anyway, so if I get to the point where I can help you folks out, and if you know, I will be happy to do so. If I ever make, like I said, any money off of this at all, I'm not charging people as well, just to let people know. And I'm not selling any products of any kind. Now, eventually, if we ever get to some point and people want hats or shirts or something like that, okay, maybe I'll do some kind of thing where you raise funds as well for you folks. But I hope I can get into a position where I can do that. Anyway, so I wanted to say that. I forgot to. Now, folks, don't forget, or maybe the first time you're hearing me, I made this from my research into Whitney Webb's book called One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 2. It's not her book, but what I came up with. It's 170 to 180 pages of an Epstein list. I don't know if anybody's checked it out. You can find it on X. You can find it on my YouTube. It's there. I even it's in a video if you like that format. And I made a link to it on Google Drive where you can look at it as a PDF file. But it will help you understand in the history of, it's as much bigger than a sexual blackmail ring. And it even goes back, Epstein has a connection to even what I'm going to talk about here in a little bit, this surveillance state that's been going on for decades upon decades. But the current iteration that we're looking at of what's really going on behind the scenes with Thiel and the rest and Palantir, our vice president's money man, And I do think going back, they want to get him in, but I don't know how well he's selling to everybody, especially in the Trump community crowd, the people that backed him. I don't know how well Vance is selling to them. So that's why I think they may be, they always have more than one puppet available. Rubio's looks like people are they may use him again because remember he ran, but he was little Rubio and, him and Trump had that back and forth back then. But now I guess he's a good guy. But you know what that came from? And I kind of figured it out as soon as I heard that lady who donated $100 million to Trump's campaign. She's a big supporter of the nation of Israel, the government of Israel, I should say. I kind of figured that was one of her requests to put Rubio high up in the administration for that $100 million. Turns out that looks like that's exactly what the case was. And here you go. I'm going to attach something else to this. Ukraine. Okay, you want to remember what I was just saying not too long ago about he's really not attacking anything when the government and war is a racket. Okay, so these meetings he's having with Putin, why hasn't he just stopped it all? Meaning, why are we still sending even a single bullet there? Here's the dirty story, because it's a giant money laundering scheme. Look at Zelensky, their politicians there that are in their Senate and whatever else it is, and the people that are on the War Council or whatever it is, and they're wealthy there. None of their children are serving in this war. And they're all just raking in money. Zelensky's wife drives a Bugatti. And some of the children and the people that are getting this money in their Senate and everything are buying up property here in the United States, even in Miami and other places. So you want to know what the war is really about? It's a racket. And a bunch of people are getting paid from it. And, there's part of the first Trump administration that was bad. Everybody was in Ukraine. It wasn't just Obama's people. In fact, I forget the name of the guy that was part of his first administration that he something happened with at the beginning of it. But everybody's been looting that country 6 ways from Sunday for a long time. But that's what the war is over. And if he really wanted to stop it, we would stop sending a dime. And there are advisors and U.S. troops that are advisors. Got one of those T-shirts myself. Not from this one, but from another one. And I know some other people who got them from Vietnam and other places. They got the advisors on the ground. Yeah, whenever you hear advisors, folks, that's special forces. That's other folks in uniform there. But he could have ended all this. This thing going back and forth with Putin is just a show. I'm not saying that he maybe won't end it because it'll buy him some political whatever. But, I think it's over 1.5 million people have died in Ukraine now in that war. 1.5 million, folks. We lost 50-something thousand in Vietnam. This guy's full of it, just from start to finish. And the Epstein list that I put out will help make a little sense of that, I hope. Look at it, share it. So, and give you, here's another perfect example of that. I just saw recently that who else was it? Jared Kushner and somebody else just had a meeting about Gaza. Okay. Well, if you go look at the Kushner family, folks, they're just like Trump in the fact that they're builders, construction people, one of the biggest companies in Israel. Guess who stands to get all the contracts in Gaza, or a bunch of them in Gaza? You can go find clips. Just type in Jared Kushner talking about beachfront property in Gaza. It's disgusting. It's sickening. And this is what these people are. And whether they can get away, you can fool half of the people or all the people some of the time or whatever. But let me tell you something in this administration. The Trumps of the world, the Rubios of the world, the Kushners of the world, and everybody else attached to them. Your time for honoring yourself will be at an end. And then you will cross over to that other side. And there's no hiding that. There are no secrets to heaven. and they know exactly the heart, and they know exactly all the lies, all of it. Your payment will come due. And I'm not sure that the master is going to grant people like that his grace to save you from it. So you can keep playing all the games and the lies you want. And you can, I don't know how these people look in the mirror, but you can look in the mirror and fool yourself while you're here. And just because of millions of people chant your name or say you're this, doesn't change the fact. I mean, I just saw when I was looking at this, here's another one. Go back, Roy Cohn. I'm going to do a deep dive into him. There's a lots of stuff, folks, but I'm going to give you like today I got a kind of some semblance of a book report from some stuff that I told you I was going to cover into about this surveillance state and the Peter Thiel and the rest of them. But I'm going to do one on good old Roy Cohn. And that's a perfect example. We got a Roy Cohn protege as president. And believe me, this guy was pure evil, folks. And this is everything politics is exactly going on now. Then you have one of his other proteges, which is a major advisor to the president, who has come out in the last 4 or 5 years or so and professed his new faith and how he's a follower of the master. But you will find him all over social media and everybody. As soon as Bolton, oh yeah, arrest that guy, blah, blah, blah. Now, this person was arrested and thrown in jail. And I think that was political stuff there with the Biden administration or before the Obama, I forget who, or the DOJ at the time. But in that case, he was persecuted wrongfully. But I found it interesting that such a professed follower of their master was now taking joy and happiness in the political prosecution of someone else. That doesn't match anything the master was teaching to begin with. But then on top of it, this same person is a Roy Cohn protege as well. And there are stories you can read about in books where this person was dropping envelopes off to sway elections for Roy Cohn and others. And then heaven only knows what other crimes and everything else that were being committed. I am sure this person would not want a full accounting of everything they did made public. I mean, even though most of it's probably, or all of it is probably beyond the statute of limitations. And I'm not saying that it should, and I'm not trying to persecute this person. But if you're going to come out and say the things you're coming out, it's coming back to you. If you are now such a professed follower of the master and you want your salvation depends on not persecuting others as you were persecuted, especially for all the unknown stuff that's never come out that you've done. And I even sent, in a response to this person, I'm not condemning you, but brother, your salvation depends on it massively. In fact, you shouldn't be anywhere near politics. Nowhere near it. It'll be your downfall again. But I just find it disgusting, and that's the current administration as well. That's how basic and transparent it is, and just how full of everything it is. There's nothing heavenly about this current administration. Go look up Paula White, right? The one who's speaking in tongues, and the rest of it, and then it'll charge you $1,000 for blessings. This is the president's personal spiritual advisor. After he saw her on TV, invited her to Atlantic City for private Bible studies. Not long after that, she bought, I think, a $1.5 or a $5 million apartment in Trump Tower. Yeah, I know what kind of Bible studies were going on there. Yep, it was. She was speaking in tongues or with her tongue. 1 Peter 2 Acts, probably. This guy's such a farce that way. And you know what? He picked her for the office of the head of the office of White because he's just putting it in everybody's face. This is how ugly all that is. Anyway, let me get past that because it's just disgusting. It's completely disgusting. Don't forget next week, Vim Miller, and I'll put out some posts and everything. And check him out on X, and I think he's on YouTube and some other places. And like I said, you can look it up as americahappens.com. Okay. So remember I told you there's this deep, deep connections for the surveillance state. And I'm going to go back further, but let me just, and Israel too. That's the other thing, this current administration, they're eat up with Israeli intelligence, all kinds of stuff. Okay, so there's a company called Carbine, Carbyne, and they came out with a product called Carbine 911. It's an Israeli tech startup company founded in 2014. The company develops a call handling crisis management platform for emergency services. They run, I think, 80 or 90% of all the 911s in the United States. Let me list some of the players. Here we go. Jeffrey Epstein, an American financier and convicted sex offender. We all know this. He was a key financial backer in Carbine. His investment was funneled through former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who reportedly tapped Epstein for the funding after his first conviction in 2007. The exposure of Epstein's connection to Carbines led to increased scrutiny and subsequent shakeup of the company's leadership. Edward Barak, and him and Trump are good friends from what I understand. As former Israeli Prime Minister and former head of Israeli military intelligence. Barak was the chairman of Carbine at the time of Epstein's arrest and death. He secured Epstein's funding for the company, and he has extensive, considerable links to Israeli intelligence and to a special unit called Unit 8200. That's like their top secret of the secret of the secret intelligence, folks. You know, beyond 007, right? 82000. That's how much further it is. Amir Elchai, Elichai, co-founder and the current CEO of Carbine. This person served in the elite Israeli military intelligence group, Unit 8200. I'm going to kill these names. I'm sorry, folks. Pinchas, Pinchas, Buchris, Buchris, a former Unit 8200 commander and board member of APAC. He was the director and board member of Carbine. His name appears on the board of advisors along with Ehud Barak and Nicole Junkerman. Lidl, I assume it's pronounced that way, Lital, Leshman, Leshem, co-founder of Carbine, who also served in Unit 8200. She later worked for the Israeli private spy company Black Cube. Look them up. The text notes that the Black Cube is also known for a front for Israeli intelligence. Just like Incutel is a front for our CIA. Alex Dizengoff, Dizengoff, co-founder of Carbine, who worked for the Office of Israeli Prime Minister. He's also the co-founder mentioned who did not serve, only co-founder that didn't serve in the Unit 8200. Nicole Junkerman, a board member of Carbine with ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Peter Thiel, the co-founder of Palantir and a prominent investor in Carbine through his firm Founders Fund. Definitely a Trump ally long before the vice president came along. Trey Stevens, a former Palantir employee and member of the Trump transition team. He was on Carbine's board of advisors. Michael Chertoff, Chertoff, former Secretary of Homeland Security under President George W. Bush, on Carbine's board of advisors. Elliot Twill, Tawill, a Trump donor and New York real estate developer, on Carbine's board. Christian, and when I say this, Kirstjen Nielsen, the former Secretary of Homeland Security under Trump. She was added to the Carbine board after the shakeup. Carbine, a central company, it's a startup that provided a platform for emergency services. Palantir, just in case, a company co-founded by Peter Thiel, and In-Q-Tel, our CIA front company here that invest in businesses, and a major contractor for U.S. intelligence and law enforcement. Palantir has been noted for its focus on pre-crime predictive policing. The Founders Fund, which is a venture capital firm co-founded by Peter Thiel, which invested in Carbine. National Emergency Number Association, NENA, a lobbying group promoting federal legislation to upgrade 911 call centers, has a massively strong connection to Carbine. Black Cube, an Israeli private spy company where Carbine co-founder Lidl Leishman worked. Verint, formerly Converse Infosystems, and Naraz, two Israeli companies with executives tied to Israeli intelligence. They were hired by our NSA to create backdoors into all the U.S. major telecom systems and tech companies. Fox News, the Jerusalem Post, these are all media outlets that provide positive coverage of the Carbine prior to Epstein's arrest. There are some independent media outlets that have exposed the connections of Carbine to Jeffrey Epstein and others and have raised massive concerns over privacy and technology. Carbine, founded in 2014, as we've already covered, Israeli startup, next generation 911 platform, real-time device location, pinpointing the exact location of caller, live video feeds, text messaging, data from ESANet, emergency services IP network. It's access to information from a user's phone if they have a Carbine app. Data link information, the system automatically opens a data link to gather additional information, even if the voice call drops. One of the critical privacy concerns highlighted is Carbine's platform can extract information from a smartphone calling 911 center that uses that technology, even if the caller doesn't have the Carbine app installed. This capability, coupled with the explicit goal of NG911 to create an interconnected national network on a single platform, to gain access to massive amounts of data across the United States. Now, let me go back to Peter Thiel for a second and Israeli intelligence. The first kind of thing with AI, folks, and it existed kind of before that, my understanding, but in 1980s, there was a software program developed by an individual. It was called the PROMIS software, Prosecutors Management Information System. It was one of the first ones that was able to make connections or create relational databases. The Reagan administration, his attorney general, stole it. and was even the court ruled later that the government stole it from its founder. I forget the guy's name off the top, but he had been infiltrated by an Israeli intelligence, one of their head spy masters. Turns out then after they stole that, and they put a back door in it so that Israeli intelligence could get in it. Then it turned out there were two versions of it, that American intelligence had somebody, a programmer, I think out west, and you can find this. It's in the story called The Octopus Murders by Danny Casolaro, had a programmer which had Israeli intelligence connections as well, put a U.S. backdoor into it. Then it turns out that they had Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, go sell it throughout the world, including to our nuclear agency, DOD. He was the head salesman. Turns out he and Trump were friends even back then. So this connection from the surveillance state to Trump's administration, even though he wasn't in the administration at the time, goes back decades, all the way back to Robert Maxwell. This is why they don't want any of this stuff out there, folks. And now he's going after all these people, Bolton and the rest of it, but none of the people in the surveillance state. Nothing going on here. Because you want to talk about some laws being broken. They've been collecting data for decades. Peter Thiel started Palantir in 2003, right after they created Total Information Awareness, I believe is the name of it. But it was originally, they had to change the name to Terrorist Information Assessment because Congress defunded. I talked about this a little bit last week. See if I can actually bring that up real quick. All right. It wants to do this to me again this week. It wants to bring up everything but what it is I'm actually looking for. But anyway, this company, let's see, let me see. 2001 Total Information. Here we go. TIA program was a U.S. Department of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, in 2001 after the attacks. It got canked because of the privacy issues. They were able to go in and get everything, folks. Every piece of information you can dream of. Total information. Here we go. Was a mass detection program by the United States Information Awareness Office. It operated under this title from February to May 2003. Then it became the Terrorism Information Awareness. The concept was predictive policing. It was meant to correlate detailed information about people in order to anticipate and prevent terrorist attacks. The program was modeled after specific information sets in the hunt. People who had connection to this, Admiral John Poindexter, he called it the Manhattan Project for counterterrorism. It was going to be part of other government surveillance programs like Genoa, Genoa 2, all kinds of stuff. It was data mining. It was resource for intelligence, counterintelligence, and the law enforcement communities. It participated with 9 different government entities: INSOCOM, Information Special Operations Command, the NSA, the DIA, the CIA, the CIFA, STRATCOM, SOCOM, Joint Force Com, what the heck? I forgot what that one stands for. Oh, Joint Warfare Analysis Center. It was hardware was at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Companies contracted to work were SAIC, Booz Allen Hamilton, Lockheed Martin, and didn't the government just talk about maybe taking over Lockheed Martin? SRS, Android, CACI Dynamic Systems, all kinds of places. Universities that were involved with it: Berkeley, Colorado State, Carnegie Mellon, Columbia, Cornell, Dallas, Georgia Tech, Maryland, MIT, Southampton. Here's where its stated goals: increase information coverage by an order of magnitude and afford easy scaling, provide focused warnings within an hour after triggering events, automatically queued analysis based on partial pattern matches, and had patterns that covered 90% of all previously known attacks, supported collaboration, analytical reasoning, and information sharing so that analysts could hypothesize, test, and propose theories and mitigating strategies. So anyway, this was scrapped. Peter Thiel and other people came on board in 2003. That's when he formed Palantir. This was all built off the Promise software. Hopefully you get where I'm driving at. But this is what this administration is buried up to its neck in. Beyond its neck, way over its head. It's an ocean of stuff. But it's collecting information on citizens to use against them in some way, shape, or form. And how many times do you think it's violated privacy laws? But you won't hear the current administration saying anything about that. They'll just keep throwing the red meat to everyone. To everybody, they'll cheer, yeah, get that other group, get that other group. So, folks, let me give you, in closing, a couple things. Whenever they want to point you at one group, avoid the knee-jerk reaction of going after those or having any kind of reaction to it at all. I was listening to someone yesterday because I always try to want to end up with something on, that some kind of good news. And there is good news, folks. This is all here. In fact, there was one part I was on my exercise today and I was listening to some music as I was out moving around. And it reminded me something even from what I talked about at first. And maybe this is the good news, but I will probably, you've probably heard this song before. I forget the name of the group. It's a European group, but it said, "Don't you worry, child. Don't you worry, child. Heaven's got a plan for you." And it does. Now, remember I said everything is able to go, but there's an overarching plan. Not necessarily a plan for you have to do, planned exactly how you have free will, and as long as you don't choose evil, and try to follow these teachings that I've played clips from here today of the Master, just to be a good person. And maybe look past what's in front of us to heavenly things. But the children earlier I mentioned, and all the children of heaven above, which is all of us here, heaven has a plan for all of us. And I'm not talking about controlling us while we're here. Or you have to be this. You got to be a doctor while you're here. I'm talking about an overall plan. The only thing we're in danger of while we're here is losing our soul to an everlasting darkness. So if you can keep from doing that, and if you have even half your sanity right now, through all of this evil that we're swimming in, you've accomplished something. Let me leave it with this. Try a kind act for yourself. Try a kind act for a stranger. Do good to those who don't like you. And you know what? If nothing else, pray for them. That's enough. To have that in your heart. Do not let the evil of this world overtake your heart and mind. And pay attention to your heart and mind and your soul, because the way we think becomes our attitudes. And our attitudes eventually become what we do with our hands and lips. And that becomes our destinies, folks. So we do have control of our destinies. You're in the same battle as I am. Try to carry a lighter heart and let all this try to weigh you down. There is powers beyond us. There's a world beyond us, folks. And it was built from the foundations of all creation for each of us. And we will find it again. We'll be back home someday. And we'll have to answer for the things we've done. And I don't say that to make it a big scary thing, because heaven understands the heart, and we've all done things that we're not proud of, or we probably wish we hadn't have done. You know, I'm not a perfect person. There's many things I wish I didn't do, and I'm sure we're all that way. But won't be condemned. There was somebody who loved us more than we all can imagine. So we're not in any danger, folks, except of losing your soul. So don't you worry, my brothers and sisters. Heaven has a plan for all of us, and we'll be okay. With that being said, I'm going to let you go for today. Thank you for hanging out with me, or allowing me to hang out with you today. Hopefully I said something that try to find something beautiful in all the moments of your days, our days. Because even though we are drowning in the evil, there is a ton of beauty that has been created around us, and it was created for us. So God bless you, folks. I will see you next time. Captain KC signing off.
Before kingdoms change, men must change.
This is KC from Ground Control. Is there anybody out there? This is KC on transmission 177.6. Is there anybody out there? This is Sergeant C from the Resistance. Is there anybody out there? I don't know, sir. Maybe there's just no one left.
Before kingdoms change, men must change.